Wisdom literature in the Bible gives us a lot of instructions on how to live our lives in a respectful and godly way. When we think of wisdom literature, we most likely think of the book of Proverbs, attributed to King Solomon, or Psalms, many attributed to King David, or the Wisdom of Solomon from the Apocrypha. Today we hear from another part of wisdom literature, also in the Apocrypha, the book of Ecclesiasticus, or church book. It is also known as the Wisdom of Jesus, son of Sirach, or just plain Sirach. We believe it was written in Hebrew by Ben Sira, son of Sirach, around 180 BCE, at a time when there was much turmoil in Judea with an exchange of power and rule. It was translated into Greek by a descendant of Ben Sira around 117 BCE, and this, we believe, is most likely the source of our English translation today. And what we hear today gives us instruction against pride and arrogance. The book of Proverbs tells us that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Likewise, Sirach writes that the fear of the Lord is the crown of wisdom. But today he writes, the beginning of human pride is to forsake the Lord. What does it mean to forsake the Lord? It means turning away, not listening, not trusting in God by taking matters into your own hands, setting yourself up for a fall. The writer continues, for the beginning of pride is sin, and the one who clings to it pours out abominations. Remember, pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. All this serves as a reminder to be wise by fearing or trusting in the Lord. Don't let pride and arrogance get in the way of doing what the Lord calls us to do, but live your lives in a much more humble way, by showing hospitality to others. It serves as a good lead-in to what we hear in the New Testament today, that hospitality and humility allow us to receive honor and blessings that only God can give to us. Sirach's mention of pride being humankind's downfall and destruction mirrors Jesus' teaching that the first shall be last and the last shall be first, or, as we hear it today, those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. The psalm serves as a good bridge between the readings, extolling those who are righteous and put God's teachings into practice by giving to the poor. They show love. They show hospitality by serving others. In Sirach, we hear of people who serve themselves and pay the price for their arrogance. One commentary I was reading this week said the price of prideful pay is this: not so much a matter of punishment as it is a reflection of the Lord's intentions to rid the world of everything that threatens the goodness of creation. For as the sage concludes, pride, anger, and violence were never intended for human beings. Looking ahead, the writer of Hebrews and Luke prove that issues of pride and arrogance have not gone away. Hebrews begins today by saying, let mutual love continue. Mutual love meaning love of siblings and love of others or strangers. And then we get 4 coupled imperatives to not forget, but remember. Remember to show hospitality to strangers. Remember to care for those imprisoned or tortured. Remember to honor all married persons and to keep the wedding vows. And remember to not be ruled by the love of money, but to be content. The Lord is with me. I will not be afraid, it adds. The first imperative, to show hospitality, is a very familiar line that I'm sure many of us recognize. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it. Perhaps you remember it better by an older translation, that some have entertained angels unaware. This is a reference to a story we heard just a few weeks ago from Genesis, where Abraham was visited by the three people, the Lord and two angels, and he showed them hospitality. And then later his nephew Lot did the same when the angels came to Sodom. The writer of Hebrews is reminding us to be humble. Give of yourselves by showing hospitality. Give of yourselves by remembering those in prison and suffering along with them. Give of yourselves by honoring others and living your life to God, not to pride and greed. And then it skips a whole section on offering sacrifices to God, that is, sacrifices of flesh and blood. Instead, we're told, as we pick it back up, offer sacrifices that are pleasing to God. That is, not neglecting to do good, to love, to share with others. The fruits of those who confess the Lord's name. And then the passage ends like it began. Do not neglect or forget, but remember. Remember first and foremost to love, show hospitality, care for others, honor and respect others, work for the good of God, not of human pride. Jesus expands on this in our story from Luke. What we hear today is a continuation of what Jesus has been doing for the past few weeks, having conversations about what can be done on the Sabbath and how we are to humble ourselves and not cling to social status. Last week, Jesus had the rabbinical debate about what constitutes work on the Sabbath when he healed a woman in the synagogue. Today, we're told he is at the home of a leader of the Pharisees to share a meal. And the first part of the story is skipped today, but in it, Jesus discusses healing on the Sabbath and shares a story much like the one we heard last week. Then he notices how people are taking seats of honor. So he tells them a parable. Actually, it's not so much a parable as it is sage advice. Don't do this, he says. Humble yourselves. Humble yourselves by sitting in the lowest seat. Then you may be invited to move up. But if you start in the highest seat, you may be humiliated when you are asked to move down. Jesus emphasizes this point by saying how it will happen. When you exalt yourself by sitting in a place of honor, the host will come to you and say, give this person your place. No name, no greeting is used. The host doesn't come up and tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, Andy, thanks for coming, but I need you to move and let someone else sit here. No, it is cold and insincere. But by contrast, when you humble yourself and you take a lower seat, the host will come and say, friend, move up higher. Much warmer and nicer than the other way around. Jesus makes his point. Then he goes on to say, whom one should invite to a meal. Don't invite others with the motive of having the favor returned, but invite others out of love and hospitality, expecting nothing in return. Jesus gives another example about this in his parable of the great wedding banquet, which you might think we would hear next week, but we don't. We skip it and we go on to talk about the meaning and cost of discipleship. We do get the wedding banquet story at another time, however. They set it off by itself, but it really belongs in this section where it was written. And I think it's pretty clear what we are to take away with us today as we leave here and we go back into the world. God's kingdom is here among us now, and we need to live into it in a way that reflects what Jesus came to teach us. We must continue to love, to share of ourselves, to give, to welcome, and to care for others. We are not to let our own pride or arrogance or greed change the fact that we were created to love. We are to humble ourselves, not in hopes of gaining affection or rising in social status, but to serve others as Christ came to serve us. Another commentary I was reading put it this way, quote, Humility is not to be feigned as a strategy for recognition. On the contrary, humility is a quality of life open to persons who know that their worth is not measured by recognition from their peers, but by the certainty that God has accepted them. Unquote. Our worth is not measured by recognition from our peers. Now, that's not to say that it isn't nice to be acknowledged by others at times, to be told thank you or we appreciate you. We all like to hear those things. But that's not why we do what we do. We do it because it's what God calls us to do, what Christ calls us to do. We do it because it is the right way to live our lives so that we experience the kingdom right here and right now. There is pride and anger and violence all around us, but there is also love and mercy and acceptance. If those are our choices, shouldn't we choose love and mercy and acceptance? Shouldn't we show hospitality at all times? Shouldn't we humble ourselves as Christ humbled himself? May we allow the love of the name of Christ to be grafted in our hearts and be nourished with all goodness, so to bring forth in us the fruit of good works. Amen.